also members of Congress, fellow members of the Honoring Our Promises Working Group across the political spectrum, that we wanted to stand up and let our voices be heard on what's happening and what we think the path forward over the next couple of days is. So before I launch into it, though, I would like to give a moment to somebody who's a personal friend, a confidant, and a mentor of mine, but has been a voice of reason and a voice of wisdom for the United States of America for many decades, and a close personal friend of mine. So it's my honor to start by turning this over to former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. Secretary Albright.
Thank you. I want to thank Representative Crow and his colleagues for organizing this event and for standing with our Afghan friends and allies at this very difficult moment. We've all been watching the tragic and horrific situation unfolding in Afghanistan, and there will be plenty of time to assess how this happened and what went wrong. But our focus today and in the days ahead needs to be squarely on saving lives. In the 20 years that the United States and our partners have been in Afghanistan, a new generation of Afghan leaders has stepped forward to help chart a better future for the country. Their ranks include women's rights activists, independent journalists, anti-corruption crusaders, and democracy advocates. Most of these people did not work directly for the US government or for our NATO allies, but their lives are now imperiled by the Taliban's advance, and they need to be evacuated from the country before it's too late. The United States has a moral responsibility and a national security interest in ensuring the protection of these Afghan allies, as well as those who directly supported. Provide temporary hosting and transit. And I especially want to recognize our friends in Canada and the Balkans, including Albania, Kosovo, and North Macedonia, for their generosity and willingness to help. I hope and expect other countries, including the United States and the major Western powers, to do their part. Let me just say that even as we work to evacuate those whose lives are directly imperiled by the Taliban, we cannot forget the millions of Afghans, especially women, who risk losing the considerable gains made over 2 decades of sacrifice. Going forward, the protection of Afghan women must be a top priority, and I will do my part to ensure that it remains at the center of the international agenda. Thank you again, Congressman Crow, for what you are doing and with your colleagues. Thank you for inviting me to speak.
Thank you, Secretary Albright. We appreciate your voice, your wisdom, your counsel, and your leadership as always. I would like to begin just by making a couple of comments and addressing groups that are of incredible importance to us right now. One, to the Afghan people, to our partners, to our allies, to those who stood shoulder to shoulder with us over the last 20 years. We see you, we hear you. You have many friends in the United States, and we will continue to fight for you and bring you to safety with your families. That is a promise that we will make. You have many allies, and that's why we are here today. I also want to address my fellow veterans. This is a challenging time for U.S. combat veterans as we grapple with the meaning of the last 20 years and your service and your sacrifice. And I want to make something very clear. Your service, your sacrifice was honorable. You stood up, you raised your right hand, and you served your country when you were called to do so. And you should be proud of that because we are proud of that. You made a difference in the lives of many people. You saved your brothers and sisters that you stood shoulder to shoulder with, and you will always and should always be proud of that service. That's always different from the political debates, the policy debates that will happen and have happened, but your individual service was done with dignity, and for that, we are very grateful. As Secretary Albright said, there's going to be time to have the debate about the missteps and the mistakes of the last 20 years, and there were many. We will have that discussion. We will figure out as a nation, as members of Congress, as a community, what went wrong and how to do it. And certainly the mistakes of the last couple of weeks and the last couple of days as this very tragic scene unfolds at Kabul International Airport and around the country. But we are here today with a very simple message, and that is keep Kabul Airport open. Send in the combat power and the troops that are necessary to secure that airport and keep it open as long as we possibly can. We have the means, we have the ability, we are the United States of America, we can do this, and we can get thousands and thousands of people out, but we must have the will. That is our simple message. And it's a message that you're gonna hear repeatedly from my friends and my allies on this call today. Starting with my friend, Michael Waltz, a former Green Beret, a combat veteran of Afghanistan from Florida. Mike, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I just want to first off echo exactly
recording in progress
what you're saying. That to our fellow veterans, to our Gold Star families, to the Afghan families who are so worried, sick right now about their relatives, 9/11 victims, everyone who sacrificed so much in Afghanistan in the last 20 years for freedom and for democracy. Your sacrifices were not in vain. Many of us are struggling with what's going on, and that is understandable. But you are not alone. And if you are going to a very dark place, please reach out and get help and speak to someone. This is devastating, as we've said. It's devastating from a human rights perspective. It's devastating for American credibility. Our adversaries and other allies around the world are watching and I think scratching their head, if not terrified, about American resolve. And it's devastating, I think, for future American security as we head into the 20th anniversary of 9/11 with the Taliban flag flying over Kabul, soon to be joined by Al Qaeda 3.0, which I fear will be far worse. But here nor there, Representative Crow is right. We will have those debates, and I pray we have some accountability for this calamity. Today, now, I hope to see a number of things. Number one, the State Department cannot be in the position of giving people a death sentence over typos and the wrong forms. That the very documentation that people need to prove that they stood with us is documentation that will get them killed if found in their home or found with it at a Taliban checkpoint. I've personally had that happen to one of my own interpreters who was not just executed. He was taken back to his home and beheaded in front of his family and alongside his brothers and cousins. That's the brutality that we're dealing with and what's at stake. I'm sure all of us who have been so engaged are overwhelmed with pleas and requests from terrified Afghans.
next, the Executive Director of Open Society US. Tom.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Representative Crow, and to all of you, including my former colleague, Representative Welch, who's been such a great advocate for humanitarian work and veterans. For all of us who were able to spend time with the Afghan people over the last 20 years or before, we know that the warlords and the kleptocrats do not represent the real culture, real people. It's a people of committed to democracy, to human rights. It's a people that inspired us, that protected us. And to be honest, they're living heroes, but they're not going to be living for long if we do not act today. We are talking about the people that stepped up to advance democracy, human rights, to stand up against some of the most corrupt and vicious figures on the planet. They did it as allies with us, but allies of a universal mission that we at our best stand for. They are living today, and what we do in the next 2 or 3 days, the next 2 or 3 weeks will determine whether they live to see this and help potentially write a new chapter for Afghanistan somewhere down the road. The asks are simple: keep the airport open, keep it open not just for the evacuation of American citizens, which is of course a priority, but for all commercial flights, chartered flights, any effort, philanthropic like ours, military or otherwise, to get out as many people as we can, an effort to prioritize those who've taken the greatest risk through their work directly with the US government and standing up for women's rights, human rights, and democracy. The airport must stay open until all efforts to evacuate Afghan civilians and our allies are out. We must continue to pressure allies around the world and ourselves to accept more refugees and to not get stuck on the paperwork, as so many of these representatives have mentioned. Our mission in Afghanistan was to go after those who threatened our security, but it was also a mission based on the idea that certain values were universal, like the desire for human rights and democracy. That same idea of a universal humanity is at stake. Do you or do you not use every bit of force you have in order to protect the lives of innocent and vulnerable people? Many on this call wore the uniform to protect those values. Many didn't wear the uniform, but fought in their own way with unbelievable courage. This is a test for us of our country's mission and our credibility now and in the future. But most importantly, this is one of those rare days where we can talk about saving lives and mean it without hyperbole. This is a chance to do the right thing. We need to use what we can to keep the airport open, to do everything we can to protect those who need to get to the airport and get out. And we appreciate all of those, including Representative Crow and others, for their leadership and asking that of this government right now, our government. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Next, we will go to Sunil Varghese, Policy Director for the International Refugee Assistance Project. Sunil, over to you.
Thank you, Representative Crow, and thank you to everyone that's joined us here. This is quite a tragedy and unavoidable catastrophe, but I guess, what I want to make clear is that it is not too late, that as folks have said, we need to keep the airport open, not just for military flights, but troops need to secure the civilian side of the airport so that we can get more commercial flights out to amplify efforts to get both Americans and Afghans out. We serve together and we should be able to leave together. The International Refugee Assistance Project, IRAP, where I work, is, I believe, the only legal organization providing no-cost legal representation for SIV applicants. We've been working with SIVs in Afghanistan for the better part of a decade. In 2016, we won a lawsuit against the government where a court decided that the SIV process was unreasonably delayed. But at this point, it is too late for processing, and we need to get more Afghans on flights. And importantly, we need those Afghans to get onto flights to the United States. DOD, the Defense Department, in April and May signaled the ability to evacuate Afghans to the United States, but they were not given the order. It is our understanding over the last hour that DOD has approved a request to bring Afghans into bases in the US, and we really need that to be robust. And
Recording in progress.
So I just want to leave you with that. We're, like many, we're receiving frantic text messages from our clients every hour. More than a month ago, they were unable to get to Kabul. Now, those that are in Kabul are unsure if they can safely get to the airport or not. Folks that had received evacuation letters are now being told that those flights are being canceled. There is a lot to do tomorrow and the day after, but immediately we need more flights out of the airport, and we need those flights to have Afghans coming to the United States.
Thank you, Sunil. Thank you for your leadership and your work. Next, we will go to Doug Livermore, a board member for No One Left Behind. Doug.
Thank you, Representative Crow, and everyone else that could be on this call today. As mentioned, I'm here today representing No One Left Behind. We're established in 2013. No One Left Behind has been the one organization solely focused on special immigrant visas, although historically we've been focused on two main efforts, one being the reformation of the actual SIV process itself. As was already discussed, it has been long, laborious, and very, very bureaucratic in nature, leading to all sorts of unfair delays and rejections. Additionally,
third countries. But yeah, the time to be processing paperwork in Afghanistan is past. We have and the State Department has a list of those
Thank you,
people.
Tom.
They've got a list, so they know who they are.
Thank you, Tom. Next question, Meg.
Our next question is coming from the New York Times. Members of Congress, including yourself and members of the Honoring Our Promises Working Group, have been raising concerns for months about the Afghan refugee evacuation plan. How do you think the administration responded to those concerns? And if you can talk a little bit about how that has played into